Hey everybody, it's Liz Gilbert. Welcome to the Onward Book Club. We are going to be speaking tonight with Jacqueline Woodson, the legend. I am going to send her an invite right now. And Jacqueline, if you're listening, send a message saying, "Oi, we're trying again." Okay, I just sent you an invite. Hi everybody. Okay. Jacqueline, I see your text. And there's all sorts of behind the scenes things happening right now. Hi, Australia. Hi, Nebraska. Hi, Australia. It's the Onward Book Club. Hi again from Tennessee, land of Ann Patchett. Wait a minute. Nope, that's not you. Everybody, let's see how it happens. Belarus, Puerto Rico, New Jersey, Colombia. Hola, 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 Colombia. I just read the most incredible book from Colombia. Why is she unable to join? Hang on. We're going to do, oh, wait a minute. I think she just sent me an invite. Nope. Jacqueline, if you're there, send me an invite. Because I saw your invite that you sent me last time. Hi, France. Hi, Mexico. Hi, UK. Hi, Brian and Ernie in Philadelphia. Oh my God. Oh, I haven't seen these guys in so long. Not sure why this isn't working. Oh, try it again. Okay, I see you, Jacqueline. I'm going to send you an invite. Let's see if it works. Invite. Okay, you have been invited, Jacqueline Woodson. Oh my
I'm
God.
here.
They can't keep us down.
We
Cannot keep us
did it.
down.
Not at all. We got this. We got this. Technology will not
Hi.
win.
It is so wonderful to meet you. I can't believe we have never met before. Everybody, this is Jacqueline Woodson, the greatest, the greatest, the greatest. We will be talking to her for the next hour. Please stick around. One
Yay.
of the people in the world I admire the most, and I can't believe we have never met until this very moment. Everyone, I'm going to turn off the power to comment. Somebody just said touchdown. That's what it feels like. It feels like. And let's see. Let's go. Nope. Oh, God. You know, I always say to everyone, be patient with me. I was born during the Nixon administration. All right, here we go. Everyone, please send up a bunch of hearts to welcome Jacqueline and let her know that we are so happy and so honored to be talking to her tonight. Um, Hi, where are you coming to us from before we begin?
Hey,
Unless it's
Liz.
private.
No, it's not private. I'm actually up here in Brewster, New York. I live in Brooklyn, but I drove up today. One of the many reasons is because the Wi-Fi is so much better up here because there are not people around me, and I didn't want any interruptions in our
You get to have all the
conversation.
Wi-Fi that you could possibly want for your entire
Yes.
self. All right, let's just get into it, everybody. I'm assuming that most of you know who Jacqueline Woodson is. If not, what have you been doing, literally? But let us begin. So we have a tradition here on the Onward Book Club, which is that we like to celebrate and praise and heap our admiration upon you before we begin. So this is a little something that Margaret wrote for us
Love
about.
Margaret.
Jacqueline writes for everyone, adults, children, adolescents, and she writes everything: fiction, nonfiction, poetry, screenplays, essays. She's a creative, perpetual motion machine, an astonishingly prolific, the author of Brown Girl Dreaming, her wildly popular verse memoir about growing up Black and female in the 1960s and 70s, Red at the Bone, which addresses the Tulsa race massacre of 1921, and so many others that we don't have time to list. More than 40 other books. We will be talking about what it actually takes to write 40 books. Jacqueline has won the National Book Award, the Guggenheim, the Hans Christian Andersen Medal. She's a literal MacArthur genius. She has been both the National Young People's Poet Laureate and the Library of Congress's National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. She's been compared to Toni Morrison. For God's sake, what else do you need to know about her? You need to know this. Jacqueline is also the founder of the Baldwin for the Arts residency program in New York State, which provides a nurturing space for artists to create. And her latest, just out in paperback, I'm holding up the hardcover, is called Remember Us, a shining, moving book about the steadiness of community in a turbulent period in the lives of both the adolescents at the heart of the story and the neighborhood in which they live. I am delighted that this book brings the one and only Jacqueline Woodson to us tonight. Welcome to the Onward Book Club.
Oh,
Yay!
thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be in conversation with you.
I am
So,
so happy to be here, and I kind of wish to start on a lighter note, but I also feel like this is the segue that I want to go with. After listing all of that, everything that you have done, everything that you have created, all how highly regarded you are, how revered you are, how lauded you are in the literary community, you are also one of, if not the most, banned authors in these troubled United States.
yeah.
And and it is certainly not because of sex and violence in your books. So perhaps if you can even articulate, if you can bear to articulate why, could you explain to us why you believe that you have been so particularly singled out to be banned at this moment in history?
Yeah. We're living in a frustrating and scary time, and I think it's really a time when we have to be all hands on deck for all the people, including the ones we think we don't love or that we don't think we're not allies for. One thing that's happening with the book ban, the reason I'm banned is because of the fact that I speak truth to American history. So, as you said, Red at the Bone is talking about the Tulsa race massacre. People don't like that narrative because it paints a negative narrative of the white folks who were involved in the massacre of an all black town. Brown Girl Dreaming talks about the civil rights movement. And when you look at the list of books that are being banned, predominantly black and brown people, predominantly black and brown women, and predominantly a lot of queer folks, but basically what's being ripped literally out of our children's hands are narratives that speak truth to power. And I think people have caught wind to how powerful narratives are and how, as Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, who is the queen of multicultural literature, among other things, said children need both mirrors and windows in their literature.
Mm.
They need mirrors so they see reflections of themselves in the literature, and they need windows into worlds that they might not otherwise have imagined or ever get the chance to experience. And what's being taken away are those mirrors and those windows that create empathy for young people, for all people. And so I know why my books are banned. My books are banned because as I said, they're telling a history. We're living in a country that at this moment is trying to erase. And I think that's the most dangerous thing we can do is erase history because it leads us to repeat it.
I heard an interview with you where you were speaking, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who you were quoting, who said that the country is like an abusive partner. They're the most dangerous when you're trying to get free, right? Like
Yeah,
that's when you're the most punished, and yeah,
yeah.
it feels that. Who was it who
That
said
was
that?
my best friend Toshi Regan, who is a singer, rock star, seer, one of the wisest people I know, brilliantly talented, daughter of the civil rights activist Bernice Johnson Regan, who started Sweet Honey in the Rock, among other things. So just legendary and so bright, and so the person I go to for to help shape my own wisdom and empathy.
Wow, that's a good best friend to have.
Yes.
Good job. Excellent, excellently done on best friend choosing.
Yes, yes, yes. She's the godmom to my kids. My daughter's name is Toshi after her. So,
Oh,
and her godmom is Toshi Seeger, who was married to Pete Seeger, who was her
wow.
godfather.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a great lineage of
yeah.
powerful, beautiful work. Um, well, what I want to get to the book because I want to celebrate what you've created here. It's such a beautiful story, and everybody, we're talking about Jackie's latest book that's called Remember Us. It takes place in the Bushwick neighborhood of Brooklyn, which is where you grew up.
Hmm.
Partially grew up in a lot of places, which I want to get to as well, in the 1970s. And in this story, Sage, who's 12 years old, reads in the newspaper that the area is nicknamed the Matchbox, which
Hmm.
was really true at the time. The characters live under the constant threat of house fires. I found it interesting that in the book, these children are trying to live their lives. They're trying to figure out who they are. They're forming relationships with each other. They're in many ways just being normal kids,
Hmm.
except for that there are sirens going on day and night because apartments and buildings are being burned all around them. You choose not to reveal in the early parts of the book that a lot of those fires were being set by landlords
Hmm.
for the insurance money. And I wanted to know, I had some theories as a novelist about why you might choose to not have Sage know that, but I wondered if you could speak to why that felt like something you didn't want to get into or that she wouldn't have known.
Um, I thought it felt true to who she was in terms of her age, in terms of the way she was protected by her family, by her mom especially. And I think when we think about young people, like they're constantly grappling with a lot of stuff and are aware of a lot of stuff. And then there is this sense of oblivion, right?
Right.
So I thought it wouldn't be fair to the narrative to have her know too much. It would be too adult. And there are ways in which kids have a deep sense of what's going on. And then they're kind of peculiar, small things that they don't understand at all. And I wanted to be true to that.
So I guess it's almost like what happens in the book is it becomes so normal for them.
Hmm.
Like I think that is the great brilliance of children is that they can
Hmm.
like they just don't know anything other
Yeah.
than all these homes are burning down all the time, and they just continue to play and grow
Hmm.
and operate around it.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if you can speak to um, childhood resilience and what that was like, what resilience meant for you when you were 12 years old. And I also want to say a lot of kids are asked to be a lot more resilient than a lot of other kids.
Huh.
Because
Yeah.
of sort of injustices in culture. But
Hmm.
what did that word mean to you when you were growing up? Or concept, if you weren't aware of the word.
Such a great question. I think for me, it meant survival, and when I think about what it meant to survive my childhood as a 12-year-old, it was getting away from bullies, right? Because we all know that. We all know the kids who are there to just terrorize and terrify you. It meant to not get in trouble from my mom because I had a really strict mom, and um, but I definitely felt like it meant learning to do like physical stuff. Like I was the fastest runner on my block, and that offered me a kind of heroism, right? Because it's like, oh, you can't beat Jackie, nobody can beat Jackie on the block. But it was this sense of I think it was in my book Red at the Bone. I wrote, I know now that what is tragic isn't the moment, it's the memory. Right? Because we don't know we're in trauma always when we're living in trauma. It's looking back on that makes us go, wow, is that what was happening? And is that why I behave this way now? Or is that why I have these triggers and reflexes now? And so for me, I look back on that Bushwick because I grew up in that Bushwick, as you said, and I think about, I have a fear of fire. I live in a brownstone in Brooklyn because I'm never going to live in a wood frame house. I never want to live in a wood frame house because those were the houses in Bushwick and those were the houses that were burning. Thankfully, my house survived those fires, but I know that so many people didn't. But it is carrying those moments and messages and traumas from your childhood into your adult life, and figuring out through therapy and writing and all the ways that we do how to move past them and let them and let their beauty shine through, right? It's just that I wouldn't change anything of my childhood because all of it has led me to this moment of talking to you, of
I
writing.
wouldn't change it either if it makes sense to talk to you. Like, great. We get
So,
it. Yeah.
uh,
Jackie, I've heard you say that, and I think it's an incredibly powerful thing to say. And I also think it doesn't, I would say the same about my childhood. I've
mhm,
also had a lot of work to do to be okay.
yeah, yeah.
And so it doesn't negate the
Hmm.
difficulty of the things that happened. I think it's just a generally wise position to take
Hmm.
that without every single one of those crucibles, you wouldn't have become exactly this person who you needed to be. You and I share something, a couple things in our upbringings, and one is this feeling that we were being raised quite differently from the people around us. My parents are genuine weirdos. Sorry, but I love them so much. It's not disparaging. I grew up with
Uh,
actual eccentrics, like, and I grew up on a small Christmas tree farm. We had no heat in our house. We grew all our food. We sewed all our clothing. Like, it was like this 19th century upbringing that
uh,
my parents gave me, and it was not how the people around me were being raised. And you were raised in a Jehovah's Witness family,
mhm,
surrounded by Catholics and Baptists,
uh-huh.
where there were a bunch of things that you couldn't do. Like, there was a bunch of stuff I didn't have and couldn't do that other people had and could do. You couldn't go to birthday parties as a Jehovah's Witness. You could, like, you have a list
Yeah.
of things that were forbidden from you. Um, I felt as a kid this dual awareness that on one hand, this was all very inconvenient, and I kind of wanted to be like everyone else and go to the roller skating rink. On the other hand, there was an awareness that we were sort of special,
Mhm.
and that it's kind of cool maybe not to be like everyone else. And I feel like that went a long way toward giving me the permission to go and be an artist and be different.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what it felt like for you at the time and how you see it now.
Oh my goodness. It's so true. I love our parallels, just how there's so many similarities and we got to the similar place of turning all of that Michigas into narrative. But I definitely felt like that kid looking back who was on the outside looking in, and I think that's the way so many writers feel, right? And I don't know what came first, the outside looking in or the writer in me. I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was very young, but I wanted to be Baptist. I wanted to go to a church where people sang and like jumped out of their seats and played the tambourine. Like we were so staid and text based and literal. And I knew every lyric to every song that had to deal with the flag. I knew America the Beautiful. I knew the Star Spangled Banner. I knew all the words to the Pledge of Allegiance, even though I was made to leave the room because I longed to sing them. I love the melodies of the songs and I love the ritual of the pledge. I
Mhm.
don't pledge now.
Not,
I
not
have,
many of us are at pledging
yeah,
right now, Jackie.
yeah, yeah, but there was a time when I thought that that's what it was what I wanted. That was the truth of that moment to belong, to blend, and it's so funny because the it was that sense that we were the chosen people, and that's why we had to walk this narrow road, and we were in the world but not of the world. And so later on, when I came out and when I, like realized that I was a person of color in a predominantly white America, all these ways in which I was in the world and not of the world made sense. But I had the armor because I had always been in the world, but not of the world. So I think a lot about that, about how what fed me, and what I held on to from the religions. Because I also grew up Muslim, So when my uncle came back home, he had been impacted by the prison industrial complex, and he came back home and he had converted to Nation of Islam and then became a full Muslim. So we grew up with the Quran, we grew up with the Bible, and a part of me always thought that those were the same religions. They were all part of a bigger narrative. And so when I like got older and saw that people were in battle, between the religion. I'm like, but we're the same person. So it's kind of funny, just like looking back on what I understood and what I didn't about my childhood. But definitely, there was always the longing, and I think that longing is in my writing now.
It's all over your writing. I mean, you often write characters who feel somehow like they're not part of what they're seeing around them. And it's not just that they have brown skin. It's not just that they are queer. It's also that even within, even within their families, even within their communities, there's a sense of
Mm-hmm.
not quite being like everyone else. Sage, the hero of Remember Us, I love her so so much. I wanted to say thank you for writing a jock so convincingly because although it seems very far from me now, I was a jock. I was a middle school jock. Like basketball was really important to me. Like
Wow.
really important to me. I had a full in my locker in middle school. I had a full like Sports Illustrated four-fold centerfold of Patrick Ewing.
Oh, I love Patrick
I
Ewing.
loved him so
I
much.
follow him from Georgetown all the
Same.
way.
He was so important to me.
Uh,
John Thompson at Georgetown was
yeah,
so important to me. Like
yeah.
the Georgetown Villanova rivalry was so important. Like basketball was such a big part of my life. And so I totally felt Sage. Like I felt that just like I wasn't here's the difference. I wasn't very good. I was much more passionate than I was talented.
Oh, that's
But
so
Sage
funny.
is a real athlete. And
Hmm.
it makes sense now as you describe the description that you have of her running and feeling what it feels like to run and feeling that she's actually going to fly feels to me like it's yours. Is that a
Hmm.
memory a somatic memory that you retain of
Um,
having that power?
well, I definitely felt that way in track. I was not a good basketball player either, and I love basketball. And all through high school into college, I had a boyfriend who was the star basketball player of our team, a high school team, and I was a cheerleader, and he was the basketball player. But but I started playing basketball when I was around sixth grade, and um, and it wasn't allowed. There was a way in which it was so gendered. I don't know if you had this, like you walked onto a basketball court and it's like, this is for the guys. Like, what are you trying to be? And I remember going up against this guy. We were playing one on one, and he just slammed into me and knocked me to the ground. And I was like, that's not okay. Like, there was part of me that expected a different behavior. And I think it wasn't even that, oh, look, I'm a girl, you just knocked me down. It was that, I expected people to be kind, on the court. Like, you can knock someone down, but you don't have to knock them down that hard. You don't have to make them feel like they shouldn't be on this court. Like, let me show you why you shouldn't be on this court. But I did feel that way when I was running. I always felt like there was such a freedom there for me to be able to outrun folks, and to feel like I could just keep going. Um, but also, with basketball, I wanted to be the first woman in the NBA. Like, that was my dream. I'm the shortest in my family. I'm 5'10". My brothers
I'm
are
the
both
shortest in
6'3".
my family. I'm 5'9".
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm like a little tiny, like in my family, they're like, what happened? Did we not feed her? Why is she so tiny?
Oh my
Sorry,
goodness.
that's wild. But
That's how tall are the other ones?
oh, they're enormous. They're all like 6'4" and 6'5". Yeah, they're enormous. Yeah.
That's so funny. But I thought I was gonna grow taller. I
Same,
just thought, yeah, I'm gonna break 6 feet. I'm still mad about not breaking 6 feet.
same.
But but there was no one of the reasons that I wrote Remember Us, is because there was the time in which there weren't options for girls to play sports is such a short time ago. Before Title IX, before the WNBA, like that is such a short time ago. I remember going to my early WNBA games and the stadiums were empty. And now we go to, New York Liberty is our team, and tickets are sold out for the season. I mean, the stadium is packed, and just thinking about that, like the girls like Sage who didn't have that option to go pro, and now it exists for so many. It was important for me to, just talk about that there was a time before.
It's the fact that there wasn't a sense in her neighborhood of girls' sports, and she expresses very wistfully this idea that she used to have these friends who were girls,
Hmm.
but then they kind of drifted off into girl things, and she didn't want to do those things, and they were curling their hair and they were caring about stuff she didn't care about, and she suddenly felt weird around them in her basketball jersey and high tops. And so inevitably her friends become boys, and one of the things that I love is that you really redeem some boys, like boyhood in this book. There are some good boys in this book, like some real sweet boys, which feels very much in keeping. You really brought me back to middle school in this book. Like I also had a couple really good friends when I was in middle school who were boys and felt completely comfortable around them and safe around them. And they were very dear. Like one of my favorite scenes in the book is when Freddy just starts crying.
Hmm.
Like the boys in this book have feelings. Like, except for one, we'll get to that guy later. But it's so sweet and tender, and when she has to leave the neighborhood and move to a much safer
Hmm.
place, there's this devastating loss. Like,
Hmm.
I'm leaving behind this neighborhood that's on fire, but I'm also leaving behind my friend Freddie,
Hmm.
who's like my guy. And so I wanted to ask you about that, about things you've written, not just in this book, but in general, about relationships between boys and girls, and how you saw that as a kid, how you see it as an author, how you see it as a parent.
Hmm.
And yeah, over
It's
to you.
funny. I definitely, have, I mean, my circle thankfully is full and, spans the gender spectrum. And I feel like as a kid, I was such a tomboy that that's where I had my best friend Maria. I had some other girlfriends who were always, and they never left me. It didn't. Thankfully, I didn't have the experience to see each other in a book, but they were always trying to help me be more female, be more like feminine. And it was a bust. I mean, they didn't want me to sit on the ground and get the butt of my pants dirty. I just had a gathering up here and I wore white cutoffs. The butt was filthy by the end of the day. I'm like, I'm never going to learn this. And they tried to teach me how to walk so that my hips swayed, and I couldn't get that. They're like, it looks like you have a broken leg. But it was this patience to try to mold me into something that was acceptable as a woman. And then I had my boyfriends. Like I had my boyfriend, and then I had all of his friends who I was always hanging with. And then then I had my queer friend, like my best friend was out at the time. And so it just felt like there was a way in which by the time I got to ninth grade, it had all shook itself out. But before that, I had my brothers, right? Um, and their friends who I hung out with. But when I think about writing boys, I remember when I wrote my first real boy character was a book called From the Notebooks of Melanin Sun. And I asked my brother, he couldn't remember. I just was asking boys, like, what does it mean to be, considered a boy
It's
in this
such a
society?
good question.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and it's so interesting because so many didn't remember. Or I remember my little brother said that, you used to bully me and then I outgrew you and you stopped. Like, because he is 6'4", and I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave you alone now. But he was very undersized for a long time. But what I did was I started thinking, if I were to have a son, who would I want him to be? And
Mm.
that's kind of where I start with all of my boy characters. And now I have a son who's 17. And it is, my son is, he's angry at me, but he's crying. Like you just see all the way, all the emotions, and he's frustrated about his tears because a part of him, um, doesn't want to be vulnerable. And it's not because he's ever learned that lesson that men don't cry or anything. Like, he's not embarrassed by them. He's more like, I want to be stronger than this. I don't want her to see me be vulnerable. But all of that, I feel like, goes into the characters at the end of the day. It's like the humanity is universal. So you can show that sadness. You can show that frustration and pain and loss of word, not even a loss, but never having had the words for the thing that you're trying to articulate. And Freddie, he's so ethereal to me. He just feels like a different kind of character. I loved writing him.
He's so he's so beautiful, and their relationship is so beautiful and so safe,
Hmm.
and so non-sexualized.
Hmm.
In
Hmm.
fact, like, that energy isn't really present very much in this book at all, which I also appreciate. I appreciate a girl character who's got her mind, whose mind is on, she has a little crush
Hmm.
for a minute, someone like, but it's not the center point of her life. And so
Hmm.
many stories about girls, the center of the girl's existence is boys.
Uh-huh.
Um, and yeah, I just loved that she had other ambitions, that she had other interests,
Yeah.
and that's not what her focus was.
And you must get that a lot. I'm sure you get asked to blur books, and there's like, and then she meets so and so, and her like, I'm like, no, she doesn't. Like we don't need so and so in the picture.
Somebody
So,
actually challenged me once. A reader challenged me and said, I challenge you to write a romantic love story. And I
mhm.
was like, my book City of Girls was actually my attempt to
I
do that. And
love that book so
I
much.
couldn't quite figure. I mean, I could. It's their love story is true love, but it's weird. Like I don't think I'm very convincing.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
so
Thank you
funny
for
because
sending me love.
the loves are fleeting
Yeah,
too. It's like, yeah, you're not saying that they're asexual or they're not sexual. Like there's that in there, but it's like, no, this is not the end game.
it
So,
isn't the main thing. I want to get to this moment that I feel like there's sort of two. I feel like in the book there's two things happening. One is that the neighborhood is burning, and the other one is that Sage is growing. Like she's at that incredibly vulnerable, touching, awful age of 12, which you brought me back to so much. Like the sense I had around those years was like that it was I mean, no one glides through middle school thinking that it's fun, but the feeling that I had was just like my body's been taken hostage by hormones.
hmm
My childhood is over before I even really knew that I was having one. I don't understand how anything works. Everything I'm trying to do to fit in is wrong. I don't have the right shoes. I don't have the right, like I don't know how to do this. And when she's, the one thing she has is basketball.
hmm
Like that's the one place that everything works. Like where everything works, and she's confident, and she can go into the zone, and she can always, and then that gets taken away because this bully on the playground, a guy, not only takes her ball and knocks her around, but also challenges her very existence with this question, what kind of girl are you?
hmm
um, which she doesn't have an answer to because she's just never really been faced with it before. And she goes into a depression and kind of she loses her joy. And you handle that whole thing with such clarity and respect and love for the character, but also you take the gloves off a little bit on her there. Like she really suffers, and there's a sort of fear like she might not ever really be the same after that again.
Yeah,
um,
that was hard to write.
Tell me more
It,
about,
it
yeah, tell
was,
me.
I just remember, I know you know this when you're writing a book and you get to that crossroads of, the question who your character wants and how are they going to get it. And it was that crossroads of, is she going to get it or is she going to be forced to become somebody else? And in that moment where the bully tries to, crush her spirit and does for a moment, um, is that is kind of that one of the many ends to childhood because childhood ends in many places, right? That we have all of these points of entry into adulthood, and that was her really her first because the loss of her father wasn't that because she was so much younger, but making that decision to show that for so many people who are in some way non-binary, I would say, of Sage, right? She doesn't she is not fitting in. She's not fitting into into what it is to be a girl, even though she is a girl. She identifies as a girl, is who she is, but somehow inside her body with this love of basketball, this guy is saying that's wrong. And no one had really said that to her before like that. And when I was writing that scene, at one point I thought, should Freddy be there? So someone be there. And I'm like, no, there's one thing about these points of entry. We're usually so alone in them,
Mm.
right? We if even in memory, there was no one around us. You get touched by the weird uncle, or someone steals your bag of Halloween candy, or I remember when I was 12, I was down Knickerbocker, which is another neighborhood, and I was with my two friends, and I had $1.25, and we were going across the street to buy a slice of pizza, and this girl gang came and stole our money. They took out a knife, and I was like, and I was so stunned because they were girls, but they had a knife, and they were like, "Give me your money," and I'm like, "What do I do now?" And then it took me a couple of blocks. I was like, "We just got robbed." My girls but they stayed with me because they were very butch girls, and they were tough. Obviously they're walking around with a knife and ripping up 12-year-olds, but it is, even though I had two friends with me, like my memory of that moment is being alone, like because I was the one with the money, and I was the one who the girl spoke to, and it was a point of entry into adulthood. It's like someone can take something away from you, and that plan that you had to cross Knickerbocker and buy a slice of pizza can be gone in an instant, and now how are you going to shift? And we walked home and we're like, oh, I'm not gonna curse, we're like, oh shoot, oh shoot, oh shoot. And then, months later we were laughing. It was like, oh God, you remember when they stole our money? Like, because it's that too, right? You find a way to find the humor in it, and also you're changed. And so with him, that guy in the park, it became a deep depression for Sage. And at the same time, I think when she got to the other side of it, she was stronger. She was much stronger, and had a even more clear sense of herself, but also found her people, so there was that.
Yeah, what I felt in that, what it reminded me of, because the thing she loved, it's like she was shocked by cruelty, by like sort of
Hmm.
senseless cruelty. And I feel like I'm still susceptible to being shocked into a state of frozen horror
Hmm.
by like why this question of like why would someone do that? Like why
Hmm.
would you take pizza money from a 12-year-old? Why would you burn down people's houses? Why would you take somebody's basketball, like the only thing they
Yeah.
love? Like what? Like we can be so shocked by human cruelty. And I have a friend who is a poet who stopped writing poetry the day Trump was elected the first time. Like it, like the shock of the horror and the cruelty of
Um,
this person to ascending power actually like took the game. Like there's a line, and I was looking for it, but I can't remember the exact line, but it's something like he took the game out of her when he
mm,
took the ball from her, and when he challenged her identity, he took the game out of her. It's like this political moment I see taking the game out of a lot of people.
mhm.
Like because the just wanton cruelty is so shocking that it like spirit dies somehow in it. and
Yeah.
and that's why I feel like her redemption and ascension at the end of the book is so beautiful and so essential. And you referred to it, like she creates her own team, and puts up a sign being like, if you're a girl and you want to play basketball, like me here. And it felt like, a feeling I've often had, especially lately, which is like, you just got to get a group of women together.
Yes.
Like if you're gonna
Yes.
survive this, you got to get like a coven. You've got to get a team. You've got to get
Uh,
a group of women together.
uh,
And I wonder what that is, who those people are for you.
oh.
Um, that you don't have to name them, but just in general, like who's the group that surrounds you so that the game doesn't get
Mhm.
beaten out of you, stolen out of you, crueltied out of you.
Yeah, I think that, well, Toshi Regan, my best friend, my beloved, is an anchor. But a long time ago, I knew I had to find my people, and not only find them, but gather, that we had to get around tables and have dinner. We started having family dinner when I was pregnant with my daughter, I think, at the time. But we said we want these kids to know that they have a village. And we did it until Toshi went away to college, which is great, for 21 years, and then watch the kids start doing it. But it was important for me to have people surrounding me. I mean, I know you have this too, just so I know that I'm not being gaslit and I'm not being insane and with what I'm seeing. And also, I wish I can't afford to not work on changing this world. Like I knew he was going to get elected in 2016 because, as you said, I was the ambassador at that time for Young People's Literature. So I was going around the country, and I got back home, and Juliet was like, "This is such a ridiculous um, election." I'm like, "He's going to win, honey. I've just gotten home from seeing this country and." Some, people are really angry about the Obama, all this stuff was going on. Um, but but for me, it's always, so what do we do now? Like, what's the action? What's the action when they ban your books? Like, what's the action when, your child can't get the medication they need? What's the action when, when a genocide's going on? What's the action when, they're taking away healthcare and public assistance? And it's constant for me. Like my mind is always like, what's next? What's next? Let's get together and talk about this and talk about it offline. I think that's the other thing. It's such a great question about who your people are, because who are the people you come to offline who know the deepest you, right? Who
Yeah.
you trust the most. And I feel totally grateful that I have that circle of people who've been in my life for 30, 40 years who I can, I don't even like to use the word fight, but that I can go into this next thing with,
It's
for this
yeah, and
sake.
it's not just getting together to make a plan, although sometimes it is
Mm-hmm.
that a plan of response to what's happening politically. It's also like I've been doing a thing a lot in the last few years where I invite people over for art day, and
Mm.
I this has been we do my what we do is I lay like blankets out all over the floors, and we do an hour of breath work, and then I set the timer for
Mm.
2 hours, and there's silence, and art supplies are all over the house, and the only rule is that you don't talk for 2 hours,
Wow.
and bring something you're working on. You can read, or you can draw, or you can do a collage, and so we do 3 hours with the breath work and the art. It's 3 hours of silence, and then we have a meal.
Oh, I
Then
love
break the
that.
silence, and every single person I've done it with is like, why is there any kind of socializing besides this? This is the best. Like we should all just be getting together quietly and making art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone
Oh,
feels like this is how we're gonna survive. Like just sitting next to each other and like parrot, like somebody's drawing, someone's writing a poem, somebody's embroidering, somebody's napping. It's so good.
wow.
Um,
Oh, that's so great. And also, sometimes I find post COVID, I dread going into gatherings because I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. So,
Nobody wants to talk to anybody, but we need to be with each other.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
why the
that's
art.
brilliant.
That's why
That's
art
so
day works.
brilliant.
It's like you don't have to talk. You just get to color.
I'm 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 so taking this.
It is
Thank you.
yours.
This is
Anybody
brilliant.
who hears it, and you'll be. People will say it's the best party they ever went to because there was 3 hours of silence. It's so good.
Wow. Wow. So, do you talk during the meal? Okay.
Yeah, after we're done, people can either leave if they don't want to talk, or they can stick around and we have pizza, and then everyone shows each other what they made, and it's
Oh,
it's
oh,
so precious. It's such a really sweet thing. Please, everyone,
wow.
steal the idea. It's the best thing I can offer for collective mental health right
Wow.
now.
And how do you learn how to do breath
I'll
work?
send I'll send you a tape of
Thank you.
tape because it's 1985. I'm going to send you a tape.
Thank you. And I
I'm
have a
so
tape player, so
I'm so living in the world of your I will send you a link, but you can go on Insight Timer and find lots of breath meditation, but it's really really good and important too.
go on
Um,
where?
on Insight Timer,
Okay.
they have lots of breathwork meditations, but I'll send you some stuff that I like.
Ah, thank
Um,
you.
I wanted to know what you learned about America and yourself growing up, because you're one of the rare people who grew up in three totally different regions. You grew up in the Midwest, you grew up in the South, and you grew up in Brooklyn. And those are like Ohio, North Carolina, and Brooklyn are very different
Mhm.
places. And you spent massive amounts of time in each. So
Yeah.
what what do you think formed you from each one of those geographies?
So I was born in Ohio, and I actually didn't get back to Ohio until I was around 12, 13, because my mom and dad separated and then they got back together, which I don't recommend. And that's when all the Woodsons became a big part of my life and still are. I'm grateful for my dad and my aunties and everything. But and between when I left Ohio, I went to South Carolina. I went to
Oh, South
Greenville,
Carolina, sorry.
and that those were the imprinting years. Like I feel like I am such a Southerner, you know, in my marrow, but I'm a New Yorker in my blood and bones. But I think that what I'm in both those worlds, like especially South Carolina and New York. I'm Midwestern in that I can compartmentalize and talk about the weather when things get too hard.
Anybody want pie?
Yes. And I'm Southern in that I can say, you know, like, well, bless your heart, and it means a million things. But New York is where I see the world, and I feel like I talk about this and remember us a little bit that I write so much about Brooklyn, and every book that I write about Brooklyn is different because it's constantly changing, right? The neighborhoods are constantly changing. And then there's this foundation that's evergreen that like is everything about you say, you know, everybody in Brooklyn knows this thing about Brooklyn. So I, again, I wouldn't change it for anything to have been from all those places and to be able to claim them in this way, and also because of my DNA, like all the Woodsons, like the Woodsons of Ohio are very proud to be the Woodsons of Ohio, and you know, at Ohio University and OSU, and you know, my uncle was the first Black man to graduate from journalism at OSU, at OU, and you know, my dad went to OSU. Like it's very the Woodsons are proud people. And I, you know, my kids are always telling me that I'm conceited. I'm like, no, I'm convinced.
Convinced? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
I love
they get
that.
so
Oh,
mad. But it's that Midwestern Woodson DNA, I think.
that is so good. You know, there's a certain amount of, you kind of need a little of that to decide that you're going to write a book. You
Hmm.
know, especially if you didn't grow up ever watching anyone write a book, which is another thing you and I like, because an evil terrorist voice in all of our heads whenever we want to do something unusual or daring or risky that says, "Who do you think you are?" Similar to the question that that boy on the basketball court asked Sage, like, "What kind of girl are you? What kind of person are you? What gives you the right
Yeah.
to think that you can write a book?" And somewhere in all of us, when you know, when we were baby little tadpole writers, something in us was convinced, you
Yeah.
know, like that, like I had a feeling like, yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
good at this, you know, and where did you get that enough of that conviction to be able to risk writing a book?
You
First
know,
out of 40.
I know. It's crazy. I knew I was going to write one. Um, I think I didn't have a backup plan. Like I knew this was what I wanted to do. And I think growing up and you know, without a lot of money, I wasn't afraid of being poor. Like I wasn't afraid of being broke if it meant I could do what I love. Like and so I was in struggle mode. I'm sure you were, like those early writing days of working this job and that job and coming home and writing at night. But writing was, it just brought me the joy that nothing, you know, that the drudgery would never bring me. But I couldn't imagine, like I watched my mom, like my mom was always like, get a job, get a pension, like, you know, retire. And you know, and I saw her retire and be lost. I remember my uncle, you know, had worked 40 years and lost all his money in the Enron scam. Like, you know, I just saw the way that people, how the promise was broken for people, and I knew that writing wasn't going to let me down. Like even if it let me down financially, it was not going to let me down psychologically, emotionally. Like it was going to save me. And so I guess that's where I got that from. Like I don't think I had a choice.
That is so cool. I love this idea that it can't really let you down because it never promised you anything. You
Yeah.
know, like it can't break, like that's the great thing about the arts. Like
Mhm.
no one ever in the history of ever said to their kid, go into the arts. It's a secure, you know, like that's where the money is. It's a secure job. Like nobody ever did. And because
Yeah.
we were so warned against it, or just like it didn't promise anything, so it can't break your heart.
Exactly. Exactly.
But you're right. A lot of, we've all watched people who made really safe choices lose their security.
Hmm.
and yeah, that just never felt like it was going to work for me either. I'm so glad you had the conviction to be able to do that. And I want to ask you, because it's a question people often ask me, but like it really applies to you. Like I've written a variety of things, but you've written an insane variety of things. Like you've written across every single genre, you've written for every age group. And I wonder how, when you're starting to conjure the story, how do you determine the target age of the reader? Does the story come first? How do you how do you know this book wants to be a middle grade book? This book wants to be a children's picture book. This story needs to be poetry. This needs to be an essay. This wants to be a screenplay. This is a novel for adults. Like, does this does the story tell you what it wants to be? Does the character tell you?
Yeah, it's definitely the character. And sometimes I think I know, but I don't. But so with Brown Girl Dreaming, it's written in verse because it's memory. That's the way memory comes to us in these small moments with all this white space around, all this unknown. Same with Locomotion, which is written in verse because it's the story of a poet. And it made no sense to not write it in verse because that would be breaking that rule of telling instead of showing.
Right, right.
And then Before the Ever After, my last book that's written in verse is written in verse because it's the story of a boy whose dad he's a professional football player and gets CTE and he's losing his memory. So again, it's those small moments that the son is trying to hold on to. But I use the books are usually character driven. Like I had Sage in my head and I knew she was going to be a young girl. But and usually with middle grade novels, it stays in the year of that person. So Sage going from 12 to 13, or a school year, or a weekend, like the case with Miracles Boys. But with Sage, with Remember Us, it breaks the rule of middle grade fiction. And I've learned that the more books I write, the more I can break the rules, because there's the moment where she meets Freddy again, and it's years later. And also the book is being told in the past tense from almost an adult perspective of this young person looking back, and that's usually not allowed in middle grade. But yeah, most my books are definitely character driven, and I knew that Red at the Bone was going to be from different perspectives because it was too big a story to tell from just one person's perspective. But yeah, the character starts speaking to me, and then I figure the rest out.
Okay, I have to ask you a question I ask everybody in these book club interviews. What is the role of mysticism? What is the role of spirit? What is the role of the mystery in your creative process? You've described yourself as a spiritual person. You are, you were raised as a Jehovah's Witness, Nation of Islam wannabe Baptist. That just covers all of us, really. Like it's such a generic thing to be. But what if you find mystery, mysticism, awe, divinity in the creative process, what does that feel like for you? And can you speak to that? Because that's kind of my favorite thing to talk about.
I love it. I love it. It almost brought tears to my eyes just thinking about it. Um, when you write that sentence and it's so profound that you're like, I can't believe I just wrote this, and right here is everything I'm trying to say in this book. That's when I feel like, the slit in the world opens and everything comes pouring through. I also feel like I am never alone. Like my ancestors are right in this room with me. I talk to them. I listen to them. And I think that that sense of existing in both those worlds and knowing that the people who left us have never truly left us. They just, become something else, is a very grounding part of my spirituality. But it definitely is, I feel like, yeah, this is prayer. This is having a conversation with the people who've gone ahead of me and with the unknown, and through the process of this conversation getting answers. I always say I write because I have questions, not because I have answers, and I have so many questions.
Questions are better than answers.
Yeah.
We don't need answers. We just need the right questions.
Yes,
And you
yes.
and so I have a question for you. Have you ever written a book that you feel like is better than you can write?
Oh,
I have.
uh,
I have one that I'm like, that's better than I can write. I don't feel like I did that. Like,
wow. Oh, I never feel like I wrote them. I
you
mean,
never feel like you wrote them.
like Brown Girl Dream. I know I did, but yeah. Which one is it for you?
The signature of all things. I can't.
Huh.
I can't write like that, Jackie. I don't remember writing it. I
Yeah.
remember researching it, but it was a little bit of a blackout. Like I don't have any memories of writing it.
Wow.
I have like it just, and I read it now and I'm like, that's spectacular. Like, oh my God, how? But I can say that because I wasn't
Yeah.
there. I can't
Yeah.
take credit for it, right? And I
Yeah.
think I think maybe when you're really tapped into that, it makes it easier also to be criticized because it's also like we were texting about not taking things personally,
Hmm.
and it's like, well, if I didn't really write it, then you can't really attack it either.
But also, it's the question when people ask, so how did you write this? So many times I'm like, we're lying. Like writers are lying. Like so many times we don't, there's so much unknown in this process, and I love that Cornelius Eady said, sometimes the story knows more than you do about what it's trying to say. And it's so true. Like we are the conduits for these narratives and but they're not ours. They don't belong to us, especially once they get into the world. They belong to everyone who reads them and has an experience with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you. I continue to lie and make believe I knew how a book got in the world, and I don't
That's
always.
another thing you and I share. You have spoken very honestly about having been a liar as a child. Now,
Yes.
I was a very problematic liar as a child. And I mean, there are also some survival reasons for that. Like sometimes the truth just wasn't a safe place
Yeah.
to hang out, but I got in a lot of trouble. And my friend Darcy Stanky, the writer Darcy Stanky, talked about, and she was too, and I think a lot of writers were when they were kids. Fact and fiction were sort of difficult to sort out, but
Yeah.
but you alluded to this a little bit in an interview that I heard with you, and it reminded me of something Darcy said. That she said a lot of times when I was lying, it was really that I was saying, wouldn't it be nice if, like. So she said when I had cousins in California, when I told people I had cousins in California, and that I was going to go spend the summer with them, it was like, wouldn't it be nice if I had cousins in California and I went and spent the summer with them?
That's hysterical.
And it's like that's what these you have said too, that your books are about. Like you make no bones about it. You're here to write books to change the world, and I feel like there is an element in all your books of like, wouldn't it be nice
Hmm.
if, like
Yeah.
if we could treat each other a little better than
Just a
than we
little. Yes.
little smidge better. So Jackie, a lot of people watching this who are watching this live and will be watching it later are writers. Some of them have had work published, some of them haven't. And I always want to make sure that we speak to them. And because I love them. And I love the ones I'll never read. I love the ones who are someday going to be published. I love the ones who are struggling right now to try to figure out why they should bother continuing doing this thing that might not ever be profitable, that might not even be very good, that nobody might ever read. And I was really touched and surprised when I heard that you didn't. Do I have this right? That you didn't get. You were 27 when you were first published, right? Is that?
Mm.
Do I have that right?
Mm.
Or that your first book was at 27?
Um, I think it was a little bit younger because I wrote it in college. Maybe it was. I don't know. I thought it was 25. Yeah, I think it was published before my 25th birthday.
Oh,
So
okay. Then
yeah.
I thought it was later in life than that. Because, and I only say that surprised because you've written 40 damn books, and I'm like, you better have started when you were at 8 in arms to have done that. But what, in a really general way, knowing that so many people who are listening to this have dreams and have talents and are also looking out at the same burning world that we're all looking at.
Hmm. Hmm.
What would you want them to know?
Um, I definitely believe that art saves us. Um, in so many ways, being able to like sit in a play in a burning world, being able to bow over our work and, to bend our head over our work and continue to write through it is a way of saying that I'm stronger. I'm stronger than this moment. And this is a moment we're in, right? And when this moment is over, um, I wouldn't want I wouldn't want to be the person to say I should have been writing, right? So that's why we write now, right? Because we don't know what the next moment is going to bring, and I think it is really important that we turn the world off, to get to the beauty. My partner reads the paper every single day on Fridays. I'm like, tell me a couple of things. Like, I really do turn the world off because I don't want it to crush my spirit. I don't want it to crush my creativity. And the stories that we're writing, it's it's really what's going to save us. So I really writers need to write. We need to write, and there's so many reasons why we shouldn't be writing. We think, but those aren't reasons at all.
I always say to people, because they say it feels like the end of the world, and I'm like, well, one of these days it's going to be, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah.
one of these days it's going to, and one of the days it's going to be the end of your life, and one of the days
Hmm.
it's going to be the end of the world. All of this stuff in this realm is finite,
Hmm.
right? Like, but we know that there's something that doesn't end,
Hmm.
and I always just say, when the end of the world comes, let it catch you at your desk while you're sitting
Yes.
working and writing. Like, what better place to be?
Hmm.
What better place to be? People have made art in the most difficult circumstances
Yeah,
in the world, and you can as well.
yeah.
I love your call to distance yourself a little bit from the news. I always think that it's profoundly unnatural that,
Hmm.
like in the history of humanity, profoundly unnatural that you should know at every moment live every atrocity that's happening every second on the planet.
Yeah.
That's not something that people had information that people had access to, and I don't think our brains and spirits can handle it. And so you
Hmm.
have to be careful. Well, being as responsible as you can be, you also have to be careful to protect that spark.
Oh, it's so true.
To live and to live in joy and to live in creativity.
Hmm.
Um, I want to just end by asking you about the Baldwin for the Arts residency. Can you tell us about that? I was excited when I heard about that.
Oh, yeah. If you go online to the IG site, you'll see a fabulous party that we had this weekend. I founded it when I got the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, which is a prize given out by the Swedish government named for Astrid Lindgren, who wrote Pippi Longstocking, among many, many other books. And so grateful to Sweden for that. And when I got that unexpected purse, I bought land and started a residency for people of the global majority, including visual artists, writers, composers, dancers, interdisciplinary artists. And this May we celebrated our 100th fellow, which I'm
Um,
blown away
can you
by.
can you share with us? Can you go back and define, please, what global majority means? Because I really like hearing you say that, and I like that that's
um,
part of.
Global majority are the people from all over the world who aren't white. They make up the global majority. So black and brown folks, Latinx, indigenous folks, lots and lots of people from all around the world. So I've never used the word minority to describe myself or any other body of folks because I just don't like that word and don't believe it's true.
Well,
But global majority.
I love that you have chosen to do that. Being able to give people space to make art is one of my favorite things. And I've been doing things of my own over here in the same spirit. And I always quote this line from Italo Calvino's beautiful novel Invisible Cities. In the last line of the book, Marco Polo says to Kubla Khan, like they're discussing the world, and he says, Marco Polo says, it's an inferno. The world is an
Mm,
inferno, and there's only two things you can do about it. I'm misquoting essentially, but he says one is to accept the inferno as it is so much that you become part of it and you don't even notice. And the other is to pay attention to people who are not inferno. And when you
mm,
meet them, you give them space and you help them live.
mm.
And I just want to say thank you so much for the decades of work that you have created as somebody who is very profoundly not Inferno. I mean, I want to stand up in a book that's about fire. Like you stand as a beautiful example of somebody who not only is not Inferno in your own spirit, but you're now creating spaces where other people can go to be away from the fire that is the world so many times. And it's just an
Thank
honor to
you.
finally get to meet you. We love you
Fun.
so much. Thank you. Oh, we lost your sound for a minute.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we got you back.
It's just been such an honor to talk to you and so much fun. And thank you for the Onward Book Club and for doing all that you do and writing all that you write. I just love your work so much. So I'm
Thank you.
honored.
We are
Thank
the
you.
luckies that we get to do this. Everybody, please go. It's in paperback now. Jacqueline Woodson, Remember Us. It's so beautiful, and yeah, just especially now, as she is one of the most banned and celebrated authors in America. Um, support her continued work in the world by buying extra copies. We love you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
the Onward Book Club. Blessings to
Take you too. Stay
you.
safe. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Bye.